Good morning. This is week 2 of the survey of British art, and today I'd like to talk with you about the medieval period. So, in some ways, we continue to deal with the problems we encountered in the previous epoch. That is, we have quite a lot of art, but we do not yet know the names of the artists. What we can do is to look at the examples of architecture and other arts, and there will be some quite famous examples as you'll see in a moment. And also, something I'd like you to observe is the connection between medieval art and the medieval worldview and the way that the society functioned in this period. What I mean by the Middle Ages, well, we started talking about the early Middle Ages, the so-called Dark Ages, in the previous week. So the Anglo-Saxon period with the Christianity and the Viking raids, we do have the notion of the early Middle Ages then. But what I mostly mean is the period from the Norman conquest to the end of the Wars of the Roses and the introduction of the Tudor dynasty to the English throne, because Britain is not yet united, so we have two separate kingdoms of England and Scotland. Today I'd like to talk with you about what's usually called the High Medieval period. From the Norman conquest to the end of the War of the Roses. Again, there are quite a few interesting documentaries, although not all of them deal with art as such. Probably the one I would recommend to you to watch if you're interested in this period is a 4-part BBC documentary by Professor Robert Bartlett entitled Inside the Medieval Mind. So this is exactly that. The way that people thought, the way that the world of the Middle Ages operated. So what we can add here is how it was reflected in the arts. And if you watch these documentaries, and if you know anything about the Middle Ages, you will see that some things are quite obvious. First of all, this is the time of the very strict social structure, the feudal society, with very high inequality between groups of people, between classes of people, and basically there is no chance of any social advancement. If you were born a peasant, you died a peasant, for most of this period you were basically a slave. You could be bought and sold with the land by the owner of the land, who was some aristocrat. What we have is the knights, the aristocracy, being basically military men, the men whose main job was to fight in wars to protect the king. So we have this feudal system of honor and loyalty. We start having some interesting things happening in this social group, like the ideals of courtly love, the troubadours, and the idealized notions of romantic and also erotic attraction. So you might say that this is the beginning of one way of understanding love, the kind of love that you find between the legendary characters from the Arthurian cycle, like Guinevere and Lancelot, or Tristan and Isolde, These are the characters, the legendary heroes and heroines being consumed by illicit passions. So, romantic love, if we can call it this way, is praised by the poets and troubadours, but it's not really something to be advised in daily life. What we also have is, of course, another very influential group of people, namely the clergy. This is before the Protestant Reformation, so Britain again is part of a larger system, in this case a religious system comprising most of Europe. So the Catholic Church, with the Pope being the leader of the Catholic Church, there is a lot of tension between secular and ecclesiastical power, but generally the Church and Catholic version of Christianity are everywhere in the medieval world. We don't really have any signs of religious doubt. If anyone strayed from the path of the Catholic Church, they were most likely to be persecuted and executed, either as witches or as heretics or as heathens. This is the time of crusades, so there is really the enormous power of the church, both politically and also in terms of private life, through the sermons, the preachings, the confession system. So when we remember the Middle Ages, this is basically what comes to your mind. The feudal system and the very, very powerful church, with its saints, with its pilgrimages, with its cathedrals. So as you will see in a moment, the most important relics of the medieval period in Britain are the works of art commissioned by those great centers of power. So basically castles for the royalty and aristocracy, and cathedrals and churches for the clergy. If we look at the influence of the medieval period in later times, of course we have a lot of fascination with the Middle Ages, especially in the 19th century. The Pre-Raphaelites and generally Victorian painters loved the Middle Ages. Art critic and historian John Ruskin adored the Gothic style in architecture. We'll talk about it when we talk about the 19th century, the Neo-Gothic style and this kind of imagined Middle Ages. As you can see in two examples here, one it's even slightly later. It's the Edwardian period, the beginning of the 20th century, and it's really an illustration of a poem by John Keats, La Belle Dame sans Merci. So the beautiful, cruel lady in a very fantastic medieval setting. We have the enchantress putting a spell on a knight. So a beautiful woman with long red hair and a knight in shining armor, and he is completely besotted, he is completely enthralled by this enchanting woman. If you know the poem, of course it's a 19th century poem, it brings about his doom. So in the end, he dies of love. So this is like the ultimate version of the courtly love praised by the troubadours. The other painting that I would like to show you now. So the way that the Middle Ages inspired later artists and the reinterpretations is also from the 19th century by Daniel Maclise, Robin Hood and His Merry Men. So another great popular hero. Um, you could name King Arthur as well from the early Middle Ages. From the High Middle Ages, we have the stories, the legends of Robin Hood, so the champion of the people. The man, well, there are different versions of this story. In some versions, he is an outlaw nobleman, so he was wronged by the aristocrats and the king himself. Good King Richard the Lionheart is away on crusade. His bad brother John the Lackland, um, is the ruler in his place, and quite notoriously, he was remembered as an unjust, cruel man, cruel to both the common people, the peasants, and the poor, and also to the aristocracy by levying taxes and basically this led in the end to the proclamation of the Magna Carta that the king was forced to sign. But around this time, the stories of Robin Hood, the robber lord, the champion of the people who would steal from the evil rich and give to the poor, or to his band of joyous robbers in Sherwood Forest. So we have this story. You can see this is the time of peasant revolts, if you think about that. So there is an echo of real events. But these are the aspects of the Middle Ages that survived the longest, that became inspirational for later times. And I guess now it's a good idea to look at the real Middle Ages and what really survives from this long period, which happened more than 1,000 years ago. So we continue in a moment.